In Germany, hundreds of people continue to die from the pandemic, and it's a battle between reactions to save lives and opening up to save the economy. Today is the first day of Germany's hard lockdown. Let's understand the situation a bit more with Thomas Parrow, who is correspondent with our partners DW. He spoke to my colleague Mamavia Uswabwaji earlier.
He has experienced record numbers of infections and deaths in the past fortnights. We're also told that intensive care units are filling up. Share the numbers with us as it has been recorded.
Today, Germany begins a lockdown that has been described as a strict lockdown, as a hard lockdown. And that first day actually comes hand in hand with also grim numbers for Germany. Over 27,000 new infections in the last 24 hours. And what is more important and probably more shocking as well is the fact that Germany recorded nearly 1,000 deaths in the last 24 hours. This is a record, and this is something that has authorities particularly concerned. And at the same time, this is something that reveals why authorities had to impose these new restrictions that start today, that will go through the Christmas period and until the beginning of next year. These numbers, by the way, are not only numbers that have happened in the last few days. If you look, for example, at statistics over a certain period of time, you will see that Germany has experienced 11 consecutive working days with over 400 coronavirus deaths daily. So that gives you an idea of how difficult, of how dramatic the situation is here in Germany right now.
And Thomas, what are Germany lockdown measures?
Germany had from the beginning of November a partial lockdown, or a lockdown light, which basically saw restaurants, bars, museums and other similar facilities closed, while at the same time schools remained open and shops remained open. But that didn't bring the results that authorities had expected. In fact, it is now proved that exponential growth returned to Germany, hence the need for stricter measures. The new hard lockdown essentially means that everything that is considered non-essential will have to shut. Also, schools will have to close. So essentially what it means is that people who want to buy their Christmas presents will have to basically do it online or buy them in the supermarket, because supermarkets and pharmacies are obviously still open because they are considered essential shops. But otherwise, Germans have been told to reduce contacts to an absolute minimum. There are very small exceptions for the Christmas days because German authorities are aware that obviously people here want to meet their relatives. There are also restrictions there, but still people are allowed to meet their relatives, their closest relatives, during the Christmas days. But apart from that, it is to an absolute minimum. The message is clear. People have to reduce contacts more than what they did before.
Thomas, Germany is a country that cherishes its Christmas traditions. What have people been saying about these strict lockdown measures?
Germany's Christmas traditions are not only very important here, they're also well known internationally. You may know the famous Christmas markets, or some of the food that is eaten here also in the Christmas season. Well, there are no Christmas markets, obviously. You can't even drink alcohol outside. So before you had, for example, some stalls where you could get mulled wine. That is no longer the case. So basically people are being told to remain indoors, to remain at home. And this is something that has affected people. I would say that most people are aware and see the need for stricter measures, yet at the same time a new poll that was revealed today mentioned that around 80% of Germans regret the fact that those stricter measures were not imposed a few weeks ago. In other words, they are criticizing in particular the fact that Germany put in practice this so-called partial lockdown, which did not bring the effects that authorities had hoped for. So on the one hand, I would say there is a certain understanding from the majority of the population. At the same time, there is certain criticism that these measures were not imposed before.
And Thomas, interestingly, Britain and the US have started using vaccination programs, vaccines that interestingly were developed in Germany. How about Germany itself?
Well, that is a very important point that you mentioned, and there is certain criticism here in the country as to why the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, which was developed in part by a German company, BioNTech, with funds in part by the German government, is first being distributed in other countries and not necessarily in Europe. The authorization to roll out a vaccine here in Germany is not something that can be decided entirely in Germany. It is something that is decided by a European agency. And what the German government has been doing is putting pressure on that European agency for the agency to make quicker. That the agency was expected to reveal its decision by the end of the year, and German authorities have actually pressed for them to do it before Christmas.
Certainly, too many people dying of COVID-19 there. That's why the Ghana Medical Association wants us to be more careful.